You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a special late night edition of the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway, and it is Sunday, January 14th in the year of our Lord 2018. It has been an unbelievable week, and we have a lot to get through today, starting with a nuclear attack on Hawaii. Oh, wait. Apparently that was a false alarm. We're going to follow that up. We also have to discuss the unfortunate misquote of President Trump, or misstep of President Trump, depending on how you read it, and his reference to many African and South American and countries, such as Haiti in particular, as holes. All that and more here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now, with you. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast, almost said project, here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. Beautiful, sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Show's a little late tonight. Decided to do things a little bit differently because I promised my 3 little boys I'd take them to the zoo today. That's right. I mean, we went a couple of weeks ago, but we were a little crunched for time, and I made a promise to specifically my 4-year-old, my oldest Jack, that we would go to the zoo. And his mom was really up on it and you know, wanted to get the family out and walk around, see the animals and all that. And if you haven't ever done it, if you're in the Phoenix area, I strongly do recommend you check out the Phoenix Zoo. Hashtag not a sponsor, not at all affiliated with this program, but the Phoenix Zoo really is one of the best in the country. I say that freely and honestly, having seen some of the best in the country. I've been to the Bronx Zoo in New York, and I'll say I actually believe Phoenix Zoo has a leg up on the Bronx Zoo because I find their enclosures and their habitats to be far more lifelike and far more realistic, and the animals seem more comfortable there, and it's just a great environment, and there's a ton of stuff to do for the kids. So if you're in the Phoenix area, or if you have plans to be, check it out, Phoenix Zoo. If you want to follow them online, it's phoenixzoo.com. They have really affordable rates. It's a great idea, so strongly recommend that. Spent all day there. We had a blast, but the food, whew, oh man, the food. Bring your wallet. Just going to put that out there. So today, it was a rough day to be in Hawaii. Rough day to be in Hawaii when people in Hawaii were broken from the regular milieu of their day with this sound. Now, here in Arizona, that's a really familiar sound to anybody because we hear that sucker every couple of minutes, it seems, when we get into our monsoon season. The reason for that is the legendary haboob. That's right, the haboobs, or dust storms. You know, this is what happens when Phoenix appears in the news nationwide at random 2 or 3 times a year for this massive, gigantic wall of sand that comes slamming into Phoenix, and all of us generally yawn and get annoyed because we have to pull our cars over to the side of the road, and the rest of the country goes, "Oh my God, look, it's a wall of dust that hit Phoenix," and we're like, yeah, big deal, it happens 3 times a year, folks, let's move on. But through our cell phones, because it's a warning through the National Weather Service, we get these dust storm warnings. So especially if you work in a large office, you'll hear 5 or 6 phones just at any given time. They'll just start popping off, and it gets a little annoying at times. But when you pick up your phone, and instead of seeing, you know, dust storm warning or flash flood warning, you see incoming missile attack, this is no drill. Whoa, crap gets real. I mean, that's like, you hear this, and you pull out your phone all frustrated, and you look down, and, oh my God, we're all gonna die. It's a nuclear missile. And you just kind of accept your fate, or especially if there's no accompanying instructions on what you're supposed to do at that point. So this, needless to say, caused a massive panic, and this was covered in the Washington Post under the business section, funny enough. Todd C. Frankel and Amy B. Wang said the Trump administration Sunday pointed to the state of Hawaii for answers about a panic-inducing false alert of an incoming missile attack, but said it would now get involved after an incident that raised broader questions about the national state of nuclear preparedness at a time with escalating tensions with North Korea. Department of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen called the Saturday panic an unfortunate incident during her appearance on Fox News Sunday, indicating the problem must be handled by Hawaii state officials. Federal Communications Commission Chairman Ajit Pai reported that a full investigation was well underway, adding that it appears the government of Hawaii did not take reasonable safeguards or process controls in place to prevent the transmission of a false alert. Now, I'm curious here, how in the actual do you manage to screw that up? I mean, what? Is there a button marked press in case World War III, and you actually lean on the sucker, and suddenly goes out to, 10 million phones in the greater Honolulu area? I mean, come on, people. I mean, what's the possible explanation for this? What is the basis of a reason that this would happen? I mean, if I was the governor of Hawaii, I would be calling everyone, and I mean into my office the second it happened, looking for which head is gonna roll. Because you just plunged the entire state into a complete and total state of panic. At times like these, when, you know, people's fears are already really tuned up, especially if you're a liberal. Liberals are really viscerally scared of President Trump. God, if I know why. Because I wasn't this scared of Barack Obama, and he scared the hell out of me. But I wasn't this viscerally scared as a lot of liberals are of President Donald Trump, that he's going to plunge the world into absolute Armageddon. And, you know, I just don't understand it, but they are scared in such a way. Then you add to the mix North Korea. Then you add to the mix the fact that Hawaii has been threatened with nuclear maelstrom since day one. I mean, probably the only people who are more keyed up about nuclear war right now in the United States are in Guam, because they are in the crosshairs of North Korea. But really, what is going on in Honolulu right now? In the Capitol offices. I mean, somebody there has to be in a little state of panic all their own, because they know it was their screw up and they're not going to have a job tomorrow. Yeah. I think that is kind of the thing that needs to happen here, because lives are lost in panics like this. I haven't received any reports that any lives were lost in this case, and thank God it appears that this passed with a whimper rather than a roar. But World War III was nearly started on a number of occasions during the 1980s due to false alarms. So add that layer of complexity to this, that a false alarm could result in second strike. And it becomes a very concerning thing indeed. Now, I know this is kind of a weird show because right now it's after midnight on the East Coast, so good night, everybody. Good morning to you early risers. It's a late show for me, but this gives me the unique opportunity to have the entire day's news feed at my fingertips, and the power is a little bit, it's a little bit maddening. And fortunately, definitely don't have the high ground this week because Watson was on before I was. If you didn't get a chance, by the way, check out my buddy Watson Prunier. Watson hosts one of our Lanterns programs. Comes on usually after me. But this week, and this week only, came on before, and that's the Battle for Freedom from Watson Prunier. And while, you know, since we're looking like we might have President Oprah come 2020, God forbid, I'm just going to start passing out shout-outs. You know, we have the Battle for Freedom with Watson Prunier. We have Common Sense Radio with A.J. Davis. We have the Defenders of American Exceptionalism with Dylan Lyles and Stephen Airy. We have the Bells of Liberty. Sorry, girls, don't remember all your names. And we have the Blake Johnson program and the Free Stater as well, and the Voice of Reason. In addition to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, if you want to follow the HollowNet podcast, you can follow at the HollowNet on Twitter, Facebook, facebook.com/HollowNet. We're live streaming it right now. And you can also find us, of course, on the HollowNet.com and the HollowNet.lanterns.buzz. Now, we're going to take a quick break from laughing about the little incident in Hawaii. And when we come back, as Jones said it very well in Aliens Resurrection. Yeah, no kidding. We're going to get into it with President Trump's would-be gaffe, according to some senators like Dick Durbin, claiming the president stated that Haiti, African nations, and I believe it was El Salvador in Central America are holes. Yeah, so we need to get into that because the country may very well be a hole, but that doesn't mean that the people are. All that and more when we come back here on the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The new conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. And now, folks, we have to do it. We're going to talk about President Trump's alleged whole remark. Now, whether or not the president actually said this, I'm going to have to go back to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. No, it doesn't matter. Once again, what was that, Rock? Exactly. At the end of the day, whether you believe the President of the United States actually said this, or you believe the varying politicians that claim that no, he didn't say it, whether you believe Dick Durbin, or whether you believe Tom Cotton, at the end of the day, it just doesn't matter. You know what matters at the end of the day? The diplomatic fallout that occurred from this statement. And if the president said it, if he actually said it in the Oval Office under previous circumstances, this kind of information never would have been leaked. I saw a laughable statement this week that said this was the most hateful language ever in the Oval Office. Hang on, let me see if I can pull that up. Most hateful language in the Oval Office. I need to see who said this crap because it was absolute bollocks. I think it was Dick Durbin. Yeah, hateful, vile, racist language when he talked about immigrants from Haiti and Africa, yada, 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 yada. Okay, I want to jump right out and tell you, first and foremost, okay, this is not about defending President Trump. This is not the Defend President Trump Hour with Matt Holloway on the HollowNet podcast and the Lanterns Media Network. Nope, not even a little bit. This is not about defending the president. He doesn't need my help. This is not about condemning the president. Again, the media doesn't need my help. What this is about, at the end of the day, is what we think about immigrants coming to our country and what we think about their countries of origin. Furthermore, what the president should and should not say about other sovereign nations in the context of diplomatic relations. Okay? Because right now, this whole thing's a soap opera. That's all it is. But the most important thing is how we view the wonderful people who immigrate to our nation from countries which are worse off. Countries which are gang violence riddled, poverty infested nations which are objectively holes. Okay? And there are countries out there that are objectively horrible places to live. And you know what? Haiti is an objectively horrible place to live right now. Now, there's a lot of blame to pass around for that. You can blame the United States' policy toward Haiti. There's 100 years of bad policy going all the way back to the 1700s when Thomas Jefferson refused to recognize Haiti as an independent nation following their fighting off France because the U.S. was in the lead up to the Civil War, and recognizing a nation where there was a slave uprising was bad politics. The more you know. Hashtag now I know. My buddies at Defenders of American Exceptionalism will appreciate it. That's the beginning of the bad policies with Haiti. Follow that up with 100 years of propping up dictators when it pleased us. We did the same thing in Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia. Insert your South American nation here. It was called the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. History class, people. Again, the more you know. Now you know. Knowing's half the battle. So, Haiti is a horrible place to live. The United States does bear some historical responsibility for this. France also bears a ton of historical responsibility for this. Why? Because France basically put a gun to Haiti's head in the 1800s and said, sure, we'll recognize your independence, but you need to pay us back so much in francs so we can finance our war machine that you will never get out from under the debt. And you know how long it took them from independence in the 1700s to get out from underneath their debt to France? They had it just about paid off in 1947. Just about, after getting some help from us. So yes, Haiti, horrible place. Objectively, a hole. Now, does it fit for a president to call them such? Absolutely not. If the president did, it was a grievous mistake. If he did not, then this is a horrific smear by his political opponents, and one that significantly damages the diplomatic reputation of America. What this cannot be interpreted as a slur against the Haitian people. The Haitian people, many of whom I know, who I grew up with, because I grew up in Jersey, where there's a healthy splashing of all the Caribbean nations and South American nations and Central American nations. Haitians are pretty awesome. Dominicans, pretty awesome. They don't tend to get along, but there's a lot of bad blood between those two countries. I digress. Same thing applies for many African nations. Now, we can talk about sub-Saharan African countries, which are, again, objectively, holes. Yeah, not nice places to live. You got a reasonable chance of starving to death, or getting shot, or legitimately diarrheaing to death in some of these countries because the water's bad. Look at Somalia. Look at Ethiopia. Look at the Sudan. Just went through a civil war. One of the most recent nations added to the map is South Sudan. Darfur. These are horrific places to live. Now, in a diplomatic sense, do you want to call them holes? It's really not recommended, because it doesn't move along the diplomatic process. It's offensive to people. And again, you do not want to misconstrue the fact that the country is in a dire state, that it is an unlivable hellscape, with demeaning the people. That is the important thing. I kind of mixed it up on Twitter with a couple of people, especially a good friend of mine on Twitter. He knows who I'm talking about. And kind of forced me to open my eyes to the larger issue here. Once again, I will say, whether President Trump said it or didn't say it, it really doesn't matter in the least whether it actually came out of President Trump's mouth, whether he thinks these countries are hellacious places to live. What does matter is that he was asking the legitimate, honest question of why we need to take people in from these whole countries instead of countries like Norway. And the short answer is, people who live in countries like Norway, countries that have their act together, typically don't want to come to the United States. Why? Because they kind of have it the way they like it in countries like Norway. They have strong socialist governments. Yeah, I said socialist. That's a thing, especially in the more Scandinavian countries. Heavy government involvement in life is key, cradle to grave welfare, things of that nature. They don't tend to want to come here unless they want to do so to do business here or export their values to here, in which case changing the political system. I know what that's like. I live in Arizona. We have Californians do it all the time. Okay? So, had a recent experience where I had the opportunity to interface with a man of direct African ancestry, and it reminded me of a family that I actually went to church with when I was growing up, who emigrated from Africa. And one thing that struck me, and I'm going to wax religious in a second because I got 2 minutes left before the break, was how staggeringly strong. I'm not even wearing it. Look at me, because I took a shower. I was going to show you the cross. How staggeringly strong their faith in Christ is. Christianity is huge in Africa. Huge. Huge in Central America. Huge in Haiti. Do you know why? Christianity tends to have an appeal in the downtrodden nations, the hopeless nations, the nations where people are crying out for a savior, the places where Christianity can get you killed, where Christianity can get you shot in the street like a dog. Those are countries where it is hard to walk with Christ, when you have a starving belly, dying of thirst, and you might get shot that day. So, if the president did indeed say these things, allow me to elucidate why we need all the immigrants from these countries we can get. Because they're tough, because they believe, and because they know how to walk with Christ and how to be faithful and righteous in the face of all that is wrong in the world. And our nation, as soft as we have become, can learn a great deal from people who have managed to keep their heads up and walk tall with their faith in the face of adversity. So at the end of the day, does it matter whether President Trump said this or not? No. What matters is that we all realize that give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free is as applicable in 2018 as it was in 1918 and as it was in 1858. Furthermore, far worse things have been said within the confines of the Oval Office and in the White House by men with far darker hearts and far darker intents. Do you think Andrew Jackson was saying kind things about the Native Americans while he forced them at gunpoint from the South into the Southwest? I don't think so. Do you honestly believe that Woodrow Wilson, one of the most racist presidents in recorded history, withheld copious use, I might add, of the N-word and other racial slurs while in the White House? I doubt it highly. Do you think that FDR had kind things to say about Herbert Hoover? I don't think so. And do you think FDR, when he turned away the Jewish emigres and refugees from Nazi Germany in the late 1930s and early 1940s, do you really think he had a kind word to say about them? Never mind all the Irish that were coming in the 1800s. Never mind all the Italians that came in during the early 20th century. All the folks from Sicily who came off the boat and were immediately regarded as garbage. You tell me right now that this was the foulest thing said in the Oval Office, and I laugh at you. For far worse things have been said, and far darker acts have been done. Let's keep our eye on the freaking ball. I'm Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, FISA courts are in session, folks. That's right, FISA courts are in session, and there have been some modifications made. Now, Lantern Zone, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, dug into this a couple of days ago. I'm going to skim the surface of it, but if you really want to hear a deeper dive, check in with Dylan and Steven on Defenders of American Exceptionalism. We'll be back from a quick break. Stick around. Hey everybody, this is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, and I want to thank you for your continued listenership and readership and all the support that you've given me and everyone here at Lanterns over the course of the last year or so. Now, as we come up on a year of delivering this podcast on a weekly basis, we've begun to feel a bit more like a community here at Lanterns.buzz, and right now, we're a community that's in need of assistance. So I wanted to call on all of you today, if you can, to log on to patreon.com and search for Lanterns on patreon.com. That's patreon.com/lanterns, because we need your assistance in order to build this network out bigger, stronger, and better than it's ever been. With your support, we can bring in more voices that have been stifled. We can celebrate American exceptionalism. We can grow and educate our people. We can lift a lantern to shine a light into the darkness. Our mission is to shine a light on the actions that our government is taking now or have taken in the past to threaten the rights of Americans without consideration to the political party or organization. We will expose destructive counterculture that aim to destroy the idea of America and celebrate the parts of our culture that live up to the great ideals formally expressed by our founders. Up until now, our entire operations have been funded from the generous contributions of our team members. That generosity has created a growing demand for our pro-American content, and with that growth has come new challenges to expand our operations. Our goal is to expand and maintain the operations of our website and the radio network. And we humbly and graciously ask that you consider supporting Lanterns.buzz by becoming a patron on Patreon.com. Again, that's www.patreon.com/lanterns. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona at this increasingly late hour. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Now, I told you before that we're going to dive into this FISA court insanity. Now, FISA court, if you've never heard of FISA court, it's the Federal Intelligence and Spying Act. I believe that's correct. Hang on, let me double check that. What is FISA? Am I being a goof there? Foreign Intelligence and Surveillance Act, of 1978. This is a law that gets revised every now and again, specifically surrounding the passive capture of our information via our phones and other devices. So, FISA court, specifically Section 702, were due to expire and have been extended by the House of Representatives and the Senate for 6 more years, and they have been approved. Now, the controversial law permits U.S. intelligence to surveil Americans without a warrant when they are detected with foreigners overseas who are already under surveillance. Now, the reason that this has drawn so much controversy is because, according to President Trump, this is the act that may have been used with the help of the discredited and phony dossier to so badly surveil and abuse the Trump campaign by the previous administration and others. So how does this work out? Okay, so the breakdown is, if the government is tracking a foreign national and they believe them to be spying, and you happen to interact with this person, then you are being spied upon as well. Seems to make sense, doesn't it? Now, what the snag is the process of unmasking. See, the law requires that me as a private citizen, if I go talking to, Agents Boris and Natasha of the FSB, which is the successor organization of the KGB, if I go talk to one of them and I'm recorded, it's required that my identity in all of the intel that's given out is masked because I'm an American citizen. Now, in the Trump dossier kerfuffle and the other apparent spying on the Trump campaign, the big concern here is that the identities of American citizens who were involved were unmasked. And that is the key. The unmasking requires approval. Okay? The question is posed by Trump. For example, did the FBI use the infamous Russia dossier to ask Foreign Intelligence Service Court, which is the court that grants warrants for surveillance of Americans and addresses most of the secret official information, Now, neither the court nor the intelligence agencies involved would confirm publicly whether there had been any warrants, who they might have addressed, or upon what evidence they might have been based. So, the FISA court is not the Star Chamber court that a lot of conspiracy theorists would have you believe. However, it is a secret court which decides whether or not and to what extent American citizens may be surveilled pursuant to Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. There it is. So President Trump on Twitter tagging back and forth that while the White House supports the extension of FISA, that this is the law that could have been used against him and his campaign in the Russian dossier scandal. At the end of the day, FISA court is a scary thing. FISA court is probably one of the most clear and present threats to the freedom of an average American citizen against the surveillance state since, 1978 when they came out with it. Now, mind you, when they came out with it, we were in the depths. We were embroiled in the Cold War with Russia. I say today we're embroiled in two Cold Wars. We're embroiled in a redux Cold War with Russia, and the stakes are much different, and I would say actually much higher than global thermonuclear warfare, because they're actually undermining the very existence of the Republic itself with their social media information attacks. The second is that we are now engaged in a civil Cold War, where the only limitation so far has been a lack of shots fired. And with the recent release of the Bundy family, and the way the left is taking that, and these new movements that are picking up speed seeking impeachment of the president, one has to wonder, will this civil Cold War remain cold for very long? And that's a frightening thought indeed. Because I do believe that this impeachment movement of President Trump could very well instigate some sort of violence by a far right-wing individual or group, and I know that's kind of playing into what the mainstream media is going to purport, but it's possible. It's possible. And that's what makes the concept so dangerous, is because it's believable. We have to be better as conservatives. We have to be stronger and taller than that kind of conceit or that kind of concept of our actions. We have to be so above reproach that you cannot move the suspension of disbelief enough, that you can't move the Overton window enough to make America believe it. Right now, the problem is the right wing and conservatives in this country are so demonized that the other half of the country is completely ready to believe in the violent right-winger. That is the work that conservatives in this country must do, and must do urgently. We must dispel the concept of the violent right-winger, of the violent patriot movement. It must be brought to an end. It has to be erased from the public consciousness. People must see patriot movements for what they are, and that's fellow Americans with a love of their nation. And loving your nation means, yes, loving the other side, even though you disagree with them vehemently. We must make it impossible for anyone to envision us as conservatives picking up arms against our countrymen. Because if it's conceivable, then it's believable. And then the powers that want this sort of conflagration and destruction of the American Republic, they don't even have to wait for it to happen. They just have to insinuate that it did. And the first shot in the Second American Civil War maybe a completely fictitious one. Think about that when you're on the streets waving the flag. Think about how you appear. Are you friendly or are you confrontational? When you're carrying a sidearm, is it for bluster and brag, for intimidation value, or is it for protection and defense? We must grip the mirror hard and stare long. Because if we must dig the darkness out of our souls, my friends, we must dig deeper. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, wrapping up this hour, taking a look at the week coming on. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. That's right. You're listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona, wrapping up this hour. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. Hey, I might do the show later like this all the time. I don't know. I kind of like it. But hey, I wanted to let you know, coffee lasted exactly the hour I needed it to. That's just good dang planning. I'm proud of myself. Paced myself the whole time, and I was able to get through it. Now, coming into this next week, I can only predict that the absolute unending crapstorm of President Trump's kerfuffle over calling nations in Africa, Haiti, and El Salvador is probably not going to die down anytime soon. This is going to be a favorite of the liberal left and the mainstream media because it gets clicks, headlines. I'll admit myself, my title of the show, a little clickbaity, but we had to talk about it. It's not going away. What we have to remember is that, yes, there are hellholes in the world. They exist. However, at one point in our history, we were the hellhole. The entire South could be described as a hellhole post the Civil War during Reconstruction. Heck, the American West could be described as a hellhole. Probably straight on up to the early 1900s. We have areas that were, badlands and slums and places you wouldn't take your children. These things existed. But it doesn't give any bearing on the quality of the people. That's important. And at the end of the day, if the president said it, he said it. That means he spoke plainly. Not going to defend him because it was really frickin' stupid. Enormously so. Set diplomatic relations between the United States and Haiti probably back 30 years. Probably set diplomatic relations with Africa back another 20. I mean, it's just bad move, bad policy, and now the White House has to play cleanup. And they were doing so well, too. What's more, the president gave fuel to the media to take away from the accomplishments that he's made. So now they can point to this in the laundry list of things that they're going to bring up in 2020. Not a good look, kids. Not a good look. So, I neither defend the president, nor am I going to beat him over the head with it. Not like every other talking head you're going to listen to this week, who are either going to smite him or lift him up. As I said on Twitter, I'm just sitting back shaking my head at laughing at the hills that people are willing to die on in the name of President Trump or in the name of opposing him. Dear God, what a state we live in now. Coming up in the week, trending on Twitter tonight, as usual on a Sunday, is football. I really just don't care. Doesn't do a thing for me. Trending as of 30 minutes ago, Vikings, UFC STL, Marcus Williams, RHOA, Australian Open, Victoria PBS, Dan Gurney, Michael Thomas, Kamara, and Madden. Really couldn't possibly give less of a darn. Just couldn't. Not a football fan, kids. Sorry. What I do really care about, which I am pretty actually psyched about, Star Trek Discovery's back. Yeah! Star Trek Discovery! I know, I actually have to pull this one back up out of the archives. Hang on just a second. Stay with me now. Don't lose that wonderful feeling that you got because I'm talking about Star Trek, and that means I'm at... Yeah, that's right. Nerd. Because when you come to this program, you don't just get the millennial conservative resistance. You don't just get the new conservative resistance. You also get a die-hard, dyed-in-the-wool Trekkie, who, as much as he abhors the space communism of the Federation, absolutely loves him some Star Trek. So, I'm going to be checking that out. In the week up ahead, we need to pay close attention to what the media is not telling us, and the smoke screen that they're trying to throw up using President Trump's latest gaffe. Pay attention. The pieces are moving. North Korea seems to be more cooperative of late. They're talking about having the Olympics there. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nobody's paying attention to Turkey. Nobody's paying attention to Russia. That is where the next story will be, I am sure. Count on it. Now, you've been listening to the HollowNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm your host, Matt Holloway, from Phoenix, Arizona. Good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. Thanks, everybody.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.